Welcome to a celebration of life, remembering Chicano literary giant Rudolfo Anaya, with Transborder Poets Dr. Juan Armando Rojas Joo and Dr. Rossy Lima de Padilla. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Rutherford, Assistant Professor of Spanish in the World Languages, Literatures, and Cultures Department at Central Connecticut State University. This event is sponsored by the Latin American, Latino, and Caribbean Center. Thank you to Center Director, Dr. Marianne Mahoney, for supporting this event, and to the staff at CCSU that made this possible. And of course, thank you to our invited guests and to you, our viewers. Dr. Juan Armando Rojas Joo is a well-known transborder poet, narrator, and essayist from Ciudad Juárez, Mexico. Dr. Rojas is esteemed professor of foreign languages, and he inaugurated the Chief Diversity Officer's role at Ohio Wesleyan University, where he oversaw the institutional implementation of a comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. As CDO, he worked to enhance educational inclusivity, multicultural student success and sense of belonging, and to recruit and retain a diverse staff and faculty. Dr. Rojas has published 8 poetry books, with 2 anthologies of poetry that focus on U.S.-Mexico border matters, and 1 contemporary Mexican poetry monograph recently published in Spain. In his recent work, Dr. Rojas has been traveling widely, sharing his poetry in translation to Arabic around the world, most recently in Egypt and Iraq, pre-COVID, of course. We are so pleased that you could join us, Dr. Rojas. Gracias. Dr. Rossy Lima holds a PhD in linguistics and is currently an assistant professor of translation at Texas A&M University-Corpus Christi. And of course is an international award-winning poet. Her work has been published in numerous journals, magazines, and anthologies in Spain, Italy, the UK, Canada, the US, Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. Her awards are numerous. She received the Poet of the Year Award by the America's Poetry Festival of New York 2018, the Premio Internazionale di Poesia la Finestra Eterea Award, Italy 2017, the International Latino Book Award 2016, the Premio Orgullo Fronterizo Mexicano Award by the Institute of Mexicans Abroad 2016, the Premio Internazionale di Poesia Altino Award, Italy 2015, and the National Gabriela Mistral Award by the National Hispanic Honor Society 2010, among others. Thank you, Dr. Lima, for being here with us for a celebration of life, remembering Chicano literary giant Rudolfo Anaya.
I suspect that different communities have responded to Bless Me Ultima because of the conflicts that Antonio goes through, the main character, the little boy, and his spiritual quest, wanting to know the difference between good and evil. And then there's the legend of the golden carp that is part of nature, the scenes along the river that where he practically lives. He fishes, he lives. So given those, perhaps all the characters that are involved and their different conflicts, people are drawn to that time and after World War II, how much change came about in this country.
We are gathered to remember the life and work of Rudolfo Anaya, Chicano literary giant that paved the way for so many to follow, including our guests. He was a prolifically published writer, but is still best known for his work, Bless Me Ultima, published in 1972. He dedicates the work, Con honor para mis padres, with honor for my parents. Let's turn to his own words as Anaya describes his life and work. In the introduction to a 1999 edition put out by Grand Central Publishing out of New York and Boston, he writes, Bless Me, Ultima was my first novel. In the 1960s, I was a young man teaching in public schools in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and writing at night. In the mid-60s, I married Patricia, and she became my encouragement. I wrote over 7 drafts of the novel, and she read each one and shared her suggestions. I was born in 1937 in the small village of Pastura, New Mexico, in the Llano, open plain of the eastern part of the state. Soon after my birth, my family moved to Santa Rosa on the Pecos River, where I grew up. Bless Me, Ultima has autobiographical elements in it. After all, a writer utilizes his life experiences. But the novel is a work of fiction which follows 2 years of the rites of passage of the main character, Antonio. I wrote the novel in the first person because I identified very closely with Antonio. With regard to Ultima, Anaya explains, "For me, Ultima, la curandera, is a healer in the tradition of our native New Mexican healers. She is repository of Spanish, Mexican, and Native American teachings. Her role is to open Antonio's eyes so he can see the beauty of the landscape and understand the spiritual roots of his culture." And finally, to his readers, Anaya writes, "The success of Bless Me, Ultima is due to its readers. One reader tells another about it, or a teacher uses it with students. I'm especially pleased when young readers read and discuss my work. Antonio's story has attracted readers from all over the world. I am still amazed and thankful. The novel has this power to touch lives of people, and perhaps like Ultima, help in the healing process that we all need in our daily lives." Thank you, Rudolfo Anaya, for helping to heal your readers. Let's turn to 2 transborder poets, both of whom most certainly connect with his monumental work.
Good evening. My name is Juan Armando Rojas, a transfronterizo poet from Juárez, Mexico, and I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Rudolfo Anaya's Bless Me, Ultima. Yes, this book, as you can tell, it's in really bad shape. I found it in a trash can when I was still a grad student in Tucson, Arizona. I cannot understand why someone would put it in the trash can, but it's a treasure. It's a treasure of a book. Let me begin at the beginning. I do not mean the beginning that was in my dreams and the stories they whispered to me about my birth and the people of my father and my mother and my 3 brothers, but the beginning that came with Ultima. The attic of our home was partitioned into 2 small rooms. My sister Deborah and Teresa slept in one, and I slept in a small cubicle by the door. The wooden steps creaked down into a small hallway that led into the kitchen. From the top of the stairs, I had a vantage point into the heart of our home, my mother's kitchen. From there I was to see the terrified face of the Chavez when he brought the terrible news of the murder of the sheriff. I was to see the rebellion of my brothers against my father. I was also many times late at night. I was to see Ultima returning from the llano where she gathered the herbs that can be harvested only in the light of the full moon by the careful hands of a curandera. I need to also tell you that my grandmother was also a curandera, a healer. And I remember those moments where she used to heal me, to clean me through herbs and praying.
Hi, my name is Rossy Lima. I'm very happy to be here today talking about the splendid work of Rudolfo Anaya, especially his novel Bless Me, Ultima. My name is Rossy Lima. I'm an assistant professor at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I teach translation, linguistics, and I'm also a writer. I'm also an immigrant writer, which is precisely what I'm going to talk to you today. My first encounter with Rudolfo Anaya's work was not left to chance. My ESL teacher had watched me go through all of the 14 books in Spanish at our school library. And she knew that I was sad because I didn't have anything else to read, because books were my refuge. I would read while I sat on my science class, not understanding the teacher. Everything was in English, and I was an ESL student who had just arrived from Veracruz, Mexico. So it was the last month of my second year as an ESL student. Our visit to the library that week had a gloomy cloud, a feeling of otherness. Out of the hundreds of books in that amazing, beautiful room, I felt I had run out of stories to devour. I was sitting on the couch, looking through magazines like many other of my ESL classmates. "You'll like this one," she said, handing me a copy of Bless Me Ultima. When I opened it, every single word jammed together in a labyrinth of meaning that was lost to me. Did she forget that I don't speak English? I thought to myself. We returned to class and the book was left on the couch where I was sitting. Next day in class, the book had mysteriously appeared in my teacher's desk. I approached it cautiously, but curious, to understand why Mrs. Cron thought this book and I made a good pair. I checked it for myself. "If you want it, you have to check your own," she said, while she was setting everything up for class. I glanced at the pages and I recognized some words in Spanish. Could it be my imagination? Is this the way that you learn English? Words suddenly make sense? But at lunch, I went to get my own copy. The work of Rudolfo Anaya opened a world to me, one I didn't know I could be a part of. The first time I read it, I was equipped with a dictionary and my wonderful teacher's help. Yes, maybe that time I only understood half, maybe 2/3 of the language, but the essence of the book, I understand that with my core, with my bones, with my longings. I could go on telling you the parallels between this timeless novel and my life as an immigrant. But maybe I'll just talk about a few themes that encompass the pan-immigrant view. The dialogues between Antonio's family, Ultima, and the insertion of Spanish words throughout the book present the linguistic reality of immigrant families. The dynamics that fuel our heritage and mark our identity. They reveal the sacred bond formed through language. Even if it's lost between generations, these dialogues call to us like a light post. They delimit the familiar, the ancestral voice, and the world obsessed with our assimilation. Let me begin at the beginning. Brought the echoes of my grandfather and his stories. Voy a comenzar desde el principio. Oral practices keep our culture alive, and Anaya's work portrays this ancient practice in his narrative form. Images of his land and surroundings help preserve the linguistic and surrounding landscapes, the llano, the vaqueros. They solidify the atmosphere. But Anaya, through the voice of Antonio, is determined to show us the terrestrial and ethereal, revealing dreams and visions that come to Antonio and further the magical realism that characterizes Latin American literature. Language, landscape, and magical realism bond in the form of traditions. And this is the gift that will keep us together, the thread that allows us to touch our grandparents' hand once they're gone. In a book full of traditions, it is hard to pick one. Antonio's mother, for example, carried the familiar traditions of knitting or crocheting in the afternoons. I read, "Qué lástima," my mother answered, and I knew her nimble fingers worked the pattern on the doggy she crocheted for the big chair in the sala. I heard her sigh, and she must have shuddered too when she thought of Ultima living alone in the loneliness of that wide llano. I knew Antonio's mother what was Antonio's mother going to do? Just like my mom or my tia Evelia, I recognized that sigh. Ultima was coming to live with them. Through Antonio's eyes, I was able to see even more than the vivid desert landscape. I reflect on his quest for answers. Who am I? As an individual that is part of the collective, what do I believe? We see these questions throughout the novel and conflict between his identity as a Luna and Maris. We also find the guiding light, a curandera who brings clarity. Ultima, to me, is the magic that liberates us, our internal voice. We should not see the parts, as Ultima tells Antonio, but look beyond in the great cycle. Through this advice, I declare my heritage is all one with the people of this land. I share with my Chicano brothers and sisters the joy of celebrating stories such as Anaya's masterpiece. I too am a boy finding himself through the legacy and magic of his ancestors, and I remain a woman in control of her magic, embracing my identity through the existence of voices such as Ultima's on page 121. Stand, Antonio, she commanded, and I stood. You both know, she spoke to my father and mother, that the sweet water of the moon, which fall as rain, is the same water that gathers into rivers and flows to fill the seas. Without the waters or the moon to replenish the oceans, there would be no oceans. And the same salt water of the oceans are drawn by the sun to the heavens, and in turn become again the waters of the moon. Without the sun, there would be no waters formed to slake the dark earth's thirst. The waters are one, Antonio. I looked into her bright, clear eyes and understood her truth. You have been seeing only parts, she finished, and not looking beyond into the great cycle that binds us all. Then there was peace in my dreams, and I could rest. These are the words of Anaya. This is the enchantment of Bless Me Ultima. Bendíceme. Thank you.